General, help me with some of the numbers here. We've trained over 400,000 Iraqi security forces, is my understanding. And after we reduce, we'll be down to about 140,000. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
A little under
so
that,
400,000 plus 140,000. My understanding is there's 6,000 Al-Qaeda. How many insurgents are there?
I would actually assess that there are fewer Al-Qaeda Iraq. Again,
okay.
we typically say a couple of thousand. Again, we can provide a classified laydown for you.
Okay, well, let's say a few thousand Al-Qaeda.
And then there are other additional thousands of Sunni insurgent extremists as well.
So I think, just saying to my colleagues, we've done a lot for the Iraqis in terms of just the numbers themselves, pretty overwhelmingly folks on the Iraqi side. Now, I'll tell you what concerns me and a lot of my constituents. You have said, both of you, that the gains in Iraq, you've said this many times before today, are fragile and reversible. You've used those terms. Those are terms of art, and I appreciate it. They're important words. So my constituents and I believe that after 5 years of unbelievable bloodshed on all sides, 4,024 dead, I remember it seemed like yesterday it was 4,000, it's 4,024, 30,000 plus wounded, nearly 600 billion spent, you have to wonder why the best you can say is the gains are fragile and reversible. Now, I think most of us agree, who have not particularly supported this endeavor, that the reason is, that's best you can say, is that there's been no political solution. And I listened carefully to Senator Hagel and Ambassador Crocker. From your answer to him, I don't get the sense that you've been given instructions from our Commander-in-Chief to change the dynamics. I find your testimony very status quo. And the status quo has been an absolute disaster, and I just don't see anything changing. I don't see us saying to the Iraqis, it is your turn. We will help you. Step out and get the politics resolved. So in line with demanding more from the Iraqis, General Petraeus, you are asking us for millions more to pay off the militias. And by the way, I have an article here that says that al-Maliki recently told a London-based paper that he was concerned about half of them and would not put them into the militia, into the ISF, because he thinks, and this is a quote from him, that they oppose the central government. But that aside, we've been paying $182 million a year. That's on an annualized basis, $18 million a month. And I would say to you, here at home, we could get health care for 123,000 kids. We could send 210,000 kids to after-school programs for that money. My question is, why don't you ask the Iraqis to pay the entire cost of that program? I think in Senator Lugar's testimony, he made the point it could be an opportunity for them to then turn it into something more long-term. But when that supplemental comes, I'm going to be saying to my colleagues, we should not be paying off those militia. And I wonder why, given the fact that the Iraqis have billions of dollars in surpluses, including $30 billion in America, and we have nothing but raging deficits. One reason is this war. Why we wouldn't ask them to pay for the cost of that program of paying off the militias?
First of all, Senator, these are not actually militias. What they are is typically tribal members, in some cases former insurgents. But this is how you end these wars. You sit down with
I didn't say I objected to it. I asked you why they can't pay for it. I
well,
understand your point
in fact,
on it.
Senator, what they are doing is they have committed $163 million to gradually assume their contracts. They have committed the $300 million that I mentioned in my statement to Iraqi SERP that offsets in fact, what we are spending.
I don't want to argue a point.
And beyond that, the savings in vehicles, not lost, actually, is certainly worth it.
I understand your point. I'm just asking you why you would object to asking them to pay for that entire program, given all we are giving them in blood and everything else.
Senator, it is a very fair question, and I think that if there's anything that the Ambassador and I will take back to Iraq candidly after this morning's session and this afternoon's is, in fact, to ask those
Good.
kinds of questions
Excellent.
more directly.
I'm very happy about that. When the Bush administration told the American people more than 5 years ago that we'd be greeted as liberators in Iraq, and supporters of the war said that the people would be dancing in the streets waving American flags, there was a whole other vision put forward. And now, last month, Iranian President Ahmadinejad was given the red carpet treatment while our president has to sneak in there in the dead of night. So I'm wondering, why is it after all we have given, 4,024 American lives gone, more than $500 million spent, all this for the Iraqi people. But it's the Iranian president who is greeted with kisses and flowers. And I'm quoting to you from an article in the Boston Globe. Suzanne Maloney, an expert on the Middle East, argues that, quote, Iraqi leaders will only begin to differentiate themselves from Tehran when they're forced to grapple independently with the painful alternatives of governing and assuming greater responsibility for their country's security. And that will only happen when we put a time frame on our presence. So if either of you could answer this question, do you agree that after all we have done, after all the sacrifices, and God bless all of our troops and all of you who put yourselves in harm's way, after all of this, that Iran is stronger and more influential in Iraq than ever before?
Senator, it's an important and complex issue, obviously. With respect to President Ahmadinejad's visit, I just make the point that presumably when he comes to Iraq, he doesn't have to worry about Iranian-backed extremist militias. More broadly,
We will, the committee will stand in recess and the police clear the people who are talking back there. Would you guys like a break after this? Okay.
Why is that? It's not a public hearing anymore?
I'll say it out. Sit in peace. Stop the war. Bring the troops home.
You know what?
I don't know what they're going to do within this. Committee will resume. Senator
Okay.
Boxer.
If I could say, I agree with you that there are certain factions there that certainly support Iran. That's part of the problem. But my question is this. Ahmadinejad was the first national leader. Can you please cool it back there? Ahmadinejad was the first national leader to be given a state reception by Iraq's government. Iraq President Talabani and Ahmadinejad held hands as they inspected a guard of honor while a brass band played brisk British marching tunes. Children presented the Iranian with flowers. Members of Iraq's cabinet lined up to greet him, some kissing him on both cheeks. So it's not a question about the militias out there. I'm saying after all we have done, the Iraqi government kisses the Iranian leader, and our president has to sneak into the country. I don't understand it. Isn't it true that after all we've done, Iran has gained ground?
Senator, Iran and Iranian influence in Iraq is obviously an extremely important issue for us. But it's very much, I think, a mixed bag. And what we saw over these last couple of weeks in Baghdad and in Basra, as the Prime Minister engaged extremist militias that were supported by Iran, is that it revealed not only what Iran is doing in Iraq, but it produced a backlash against them and a rallying of support for the Prime Minister in being ready to take them on. Iran by no means has it all its own way in Iraq. Iraqis remember with clarity and bitterness the 1980 to 88
Yes.
Iran-Iraq war.
Well, that's my point.
In which
And now he's getting kissed on the cheeks. That's my point.
and there was a lot of commentary around among Iraqis, including among Shia Iraqis, about just that point. What's he doing here after what they did to us during that war? But Iraqi Shia died by the tens, by the hundreds of thousands, defending their Arab and Iraqi identity and state against a Persian enemy. And that's again, deeply felt. It means when Iran's hand is exposed in backing these extremist militias that there is a backlash, broadly speaking, in the country, including from Iraq Shia. And I think that's important, and I think it's important that the Iraqi government build on it.
I give up. It is what it is. They kissed him on the cheek. I mean, what they say over the dinner table is one thing, but they actually kissed him on the cheek. He had a red carpet treatment, and we are losing our sons and daughters every single day for the Iraqis to be free. It is irritating, is my point.
Senator, the vice president was in Iraq just a couple weeks after that, and he also had a very warm reception.
Did he get kissed?
I believe he did get kissed.
I want to know whether he got kissed, that's all.